Amanda.
And I'm Mel.
And this is the Road Back Home podcast. Hello, lovely listener. It's Amanda here, and I'm flying solo this week. Well, actually, I'm not, because I have another voice to bring to the conversation. And that voice belongs to Jessica Neighbour. Jessica is somebody that I have most recently met on Substack. She is an international voice coach and author, supporting women to speak confidently with public speaking skills and just using our voice in life. Jessica's Substack is Love Your Voice. She is also a podcaster. She co-hosts a podcast called Girlfriends of a Certain Age. And she's a very exciting person for me to have met. We clicked straight away. And Jessica talks about a phenomenon she calls voice scars. And so that's what this episode is about. And also, as usual, we get real about this, and it might appear, here I am on a podcast. I've been speaking online and in person. I've been using my voice, publicly for the last, 11 or 12 years. I write. It might appear to people that I have no hang-ups when it comes to my voice, but I do. And there are areas that I have doubt and insecurity. And I brought that to Jessica in this conversation. And I just loved how she held it for me and mirrored back to me, the value that she is coming to recognize in my voice, which is always a lovely thing to have somebody reflect back to you something positive that you are maybe not seeing yourself or not fully holding space for yourself. They're the kind of people I want in my life, and Jessica's one of them. So let me introduce you to her now. Jessica Neighbour, you are very, very welcome to the Road Back Home podcast. I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yes, new buddies, I guess, and we just hit it off straight away.
We really did. I feel like we're distant cousins. I don't know what happened, but we just completely hit it off and couldn't stop talking, which is very on brand for me.
And me. So I was like, hey, we'd be good podcast co-hosts together.
Yes, it's a good thing we're podcasters, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Jessica, you are here to help the listeners understand and heal what you call a voice scar or an art scar. Now, I know because we did have a pre-talk before this, and I was like, okay, this is a topic that I really want, a conversation that I want to bring to the pod. So tell us, what is a voice scar?
Well, a voice scar came to me about one of my clients, and it was a singing client, actually. And he, years ago, was having a block. He was a beautiful singer, guitarist, and he shared with me that he had an art scar from his very overly critical father growing up. And I had an aha moment. I thought, oh my God, an art scar is exactly what a voice scar is. And it's not just for singers who are carrying around some, old baggage, but for my public speaking clients, and specifically for the women, because this feels like it's just a universal wound. So I took the art scar idea, which is out there, and just took it one level further into a specific voice scar for us. And it really means that it's this emotional wound or old belief from a past experience that can prevent us from speaking and using our voice, creatively and freely today.
Yeah. And causes aside, let's say, we know, because what you've just said, the cause might be, you were shushed at some point in your life. But instantly when I heard you talk about this concept, I was like, I could think of at least 3 different women that I have worked with and myself as well. Ever since we had the conversation, I was like, wow, I am observing the places in my life where I am afraid to use my voice, and all the different contexts, and we'll cover some of them. But there's one client in particular I think of who, and she's a friend actually, she had mentioned that, in school choir, she was,
Uh,
proudly singing, along with everybody else. And the teacher basically told her to shut her mouth and mime.
that one drives me crazy. I have heard that one countless times from both my singing and public speaking clients, and it breaks my heart. I'm like, how dare this person who is ushering in these young people to be expressive shut them down? So that absolutely drives me crazy. And I'm sorry your client had to go through it. And it's so interesting. I'm assuming she's an adult now, and all these years later, she's still carrying around that wound.
Yeah, it's there now. I must say she's an absolute badass now, but
Hey.
yeah, but it is something she has had to, let's say, discover and overcome herself. I'm also thinking of another friend who um, doesn't use her voice, and this would be for me also. Like, don't use. I have fear of using my voice to assert myself. I
uh,
use my voice to defend myself, but to assert myself or to speak the truth or just to open my mouth and say anything that might be inconvenient.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. The good girl training, the people pleaser training that I think is often quite universal for women really puts us in a bind about how assertive we can be. A lot of it does go back to voice scars, but a lot of that is also determined by our culture. And
Mm.
women have to walk this tightrope. We want to be taken seriously. We want to be assertive, but we don't want to be called a bitch. And so often, women who are really just being assertive, just saying what they need and what's okay and what's not okay, are often actually accused of being aggressive, right? Which is
Mhm.
a more extreme form of communication. And so I think for real fear, for real consequences in, our past for being assertive, we often second guess ourselves. We often soften our message. We often, pad what we're saying for fear of not being liked or worse.
Yeah. And something else here I think is important to say is that, the tendency, I think, of anyone in possession of a Western mind or a Westernized mind, the
Mm,
tendency is to go back and look for the where the wounding happened. Like
mm,
because somebody might be listening now and be like, well, I was never told to shut up and quiet. Like it doesn't apply to me because I can't pinpoint a time when it happened.
hmm.
But in our conversation prior to this conversation, where we were getting to know each other a little bit, I obviously am Irish. You have Irish ancestry, and you
Yeah.
were married to a member of the Choctaw. Is it Choctaw Indian
Yes.
nation?
Native American. Yes.
Native American, yes, the Choctaw.
Yes.
So,
Right.
but yeah, the tendency is to try and look back into our past and say, does this apply to me? And do I have a wound? But what we were kind of talking about is that this can be like a generational thing imprinted upon us.
Hmm.
And as two nations who have had their literal language, you know, like brutalized out of us,
That's
it
right.
would make sense that if you have that ancestry, chances are there is some kind of lingering trauma from having been literally silenced.
Yes, I think that's so true, and I'm so happy to see the resurgence of both Gaelic and Choctaw, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And I was laughing, Amanda, because I was so excited to tell you that I'm Irish American, and I'm like, you must hear that constantly. It must be so annoying to Irish people, but I do have an actual relative to shout out, John B. Keane from Listowel.
Stop.
Yeah, that's
What?
that's one of my relatives. Yeah.
You know who that is?
Well, I know of him, haven't met him yet, but he's our people. He's a
Well,
playwright.
John B. Keane. Yeah, so he's R.I.P. John B. Keane, but his
Yeah,
you know, of the field. Okay, I'm just a little bit starstruck. That you're related to John B. Keane?
I am, but I think you know more about him than I do. I know he's a playwright, and
Wow.
I know he ran a pub in Listowel, and that's about it.
Well, prepare yourself, dear Jessica, to be absolutely bombarded by me after this conversation with like, you need to see this, you need to
Oh,
see
I
this,
would
you need to
love
see this.
that. I would love that.
Okay.
But to your point about the language and the, and another relative of the same lineage, Richard O'Connor, my mother's grandfather, taught Gaelic in Ireland and was punished for it. And that was part of the reason they came here and wound up in San
Hmm.
Francisco, which has a huge Irish American population. So that direct result of the language trauma could very likely inform our voice scar. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like literally exiled.
literally exiled, yes. And then I don't know, like, what is the current status with speaking Gaelic and how has that culture shifted or in Ireland around it?
It's making a resurgence. I did all my schooling of Scoilga in the Irish language, and so I do speak Irish. Now, I speak it mostly to myself in my head,
Ah,
um, because it wouldn't where I live anyway. There are areas called the Gaeltacht where people will speak it on a daily basis, whereas for me, it is still something that I have to keep alive in my own head in order to keep it going for myself. But yeah, so your other ancestor is, so I presume that that person was a hedge master. That's what they were called. They were teachers in the made illegal schools. Because if you were Catholic, you were barred from having an education, you were barred from speaking your own language, you were barred from practicing your own faith, things like that. Um, so, um, so yeah, I want to kind of say that for the listener who might think, oh, this doesn't apply to me because I don't have a specific event in my life where I was
yeah.
shushed.
Yes.
Um, mm, Go
And I
ahead.
might add on to that to also, I think the cultural, the language piece is so brilliant and it's absolutely true. And then just also the cultural norms, right?
Mm,
There's oftentimes just gender discrepancies between what women can say and what men can say, and they're rigid for both of us. I'm raising two teenage boys, and
mm.
they joke with each other if they say something that's considered quote soft. So I feel like it hurts everyone to have these very rigid
Yes.
language roles, right? But women struggle to be more assertive. We see it too. Research shows us that young girls are really full of themselves, and then puberty hits. Generally speaking, confidence plummets in girls, and they struggle to speak up as much from there on. This is research. Whereas the boys, they start to grow their voice. They start to feel like they can be more assertive and more aggressive. So it really does. We all suffer for these things, but that might
Yeah.
be something interesting for people listening to consider too. Is okay, what's my specific, if I do have one, from either my schooling, from my family, what was my family's like communication style in general? Were we a warm and expressive family, or were we reserved and restrained? And did you get punished for saying something out of line or something that someone considered dumb, right? These things have a lasting impact. And then also looking outside of your family and schooling and just to what the messaging is around us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Here, not to get too political, but here in the United States right now, we are dealing with a whole insane new administration. And a lot of women in particular are speaking out.
Mm.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And the thing that drives me crazy is these really brave women keep getting called, quote, shrill. Have you ever heard a
Hmm.
man be called shrill? Right? We
I
don't.
know.
We don't use the same language when we're describing a man's voice. So there's just so much wrapped up in what our like speaking communication identity is, and so I think it's just valuable to just look at it, and think what's
Yes.
influenced you. Yeah,
Yeah. It's the water we swim in.
it's the
So
water we swim in.
mm,
Bingo.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't, I guess, don't expect to be able to see it. It's more a case of, yeah, it's
And I love telling my clients to write because I think that is the opportunity. I know you're a big journaler. I loved that about you. And so I do have a book, Love Your Voice, public speaking workbook for women. And it's just got tons of writing prompts to think at a more granular level about what your experience was like growing up with your voice. And then fun exercises and ways to heal and explore it and start to kind of reimagine it from, I think, often that brave little girl who then
Yeah.
somehow got led astray, you know?
Oh, I have a great example as you were speaking. I was like, I know an example of this. My neighbor, they got a puppy, and I was just obsessed with this puppy, and I was like, can I come up and see the puppy? So I went up to see, and I was like, and I'll talk to you too, but I am, just to be clear, coming up to see the puppy. So I was sitting at the kitchen table talking to mom and the two little girls. One of the younger one, she maybe is 8, and she's just so full of herself and wonderfully
Yes.
expressive and dramatic. And so I asked her, how is school? How's things going? And she was like, fine. Only I had to sit beside my ex. And then, and I said to her, all right. And she said, yeah, he told me I have anger issues. And I said, and do you have anger issues or do you have boundaries?
Ooh, there you
And
go.
that's exactly what her mother did. Her mom was like, whoa, I never thought of that. And and it was just a moment of like reframing that, and also a kind of like, whoa, hold on for a second, like, you're, because there was a little bit of context in between that. She was sitting beside her ex and he just wants to talk to her all the time and keep, hold her attention, and she told him, just, like, no, like, talk to the hand kind of a thing. And she's very sassy with him, but it was called anger issues. She was setting boundaries.
She was setting boundaries. Yep.
And so how many of us struggle with our voice when it comes to boundaries, you know?
So many.
Yeah.
So many. Especially women. I mean, the whole concept of consent, right? And I do think we're making progress, but our age, I'm a Gen Xer, I know you are too.
Same.
We were put in the position, you tell them no. And I do love the progress that's being made, because now what the messaging is for young people is you wait for yes.
Mm.
But we literally were brought up being told you got to say no at every step of the way. But if you put yourself in a, vulnerable position, shame on you.
Yes, so the responsibility, once again, put on the female
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
assert the boundary instead of, teaching the boys how to respect a boundary and
Right.
and wait for consent. God, that's so interesting. One of my voice scars is definitely, or was at least definitely, around the word no and men,
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
I think a lot of
Another,
us.
yeah, and another of my voice scars are around emotionally reactive people.
Uh-huh.
So I tend to become a bit mute
Yes.
around emotionally reactive people because it's like, afraid. I'm just afraid if I say the thing, there's going to be a reaction, and usually there is. But is that a good enough reason for me to not say the thing?
I can totally relate. I have one
Mm,
relative, one parent who's very volatile, and I had to walk on eggshells around them.
mm,
Other
yeah,
one absolutely embraced me, celebrated me. So I'm very grateful for that. But the
mm,
walking around on eggshells was terrifying with what the
yeah.
consequences could be. And so I found myself constantly second guessing what I was going to say. And then also thinking it was my fault when I set that person off.
There we go. Okay. This is great. So these are like symptoms, things to look out for, the second guessing, the managing of other people's emotions, the taking responsibility to enforce boundaries as opposed to, allowing, expecting the other person to, like, having the expectation that you need to be a part of this. And this isn't just about me trying to, um, you know, protect myself from your will,
Right.
you
That's
know?
right. Right. So if I think definitely with like narcissists or with volatile people, there is a whole recovery around that that's really important to address because
Mm,
the
yeah.
communication for those people is really tricky. So there is something in the workbook where I do talk about like how to have a difficult conversation, and this comes from years of therapy and just researching this because you don't know if you're safe. So first of all, you have to figure out with volatile people if it's worth your time and energy, and then you also
Yeah.
have to realize which way do you want to have this difficult conversation? Is it safer online? Is it safer on the phone? Is it safer in a letter? If it's important enough to you, you can navigate that in a certain way. But I mean, at least in my case, Amanda, I realized that it was not worth it. It was not worth my time, and that was a really hard thing to accept, for sure.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be getting that workbook and doing the work on it. Um, yeah. So the other thing as well, then this idea of walking on eggshells, that let's stop normalizing that as a thing, and especially for us Gen Xers, there's younger, but that is who's listening to this podcast is like, let's stop normalizing the walking on eggshells. Let's stop normalizing the must sweep under the carpet. They're not saying the thing. As you say, maybe sometimes it's just like, well, I'm not going to say anything because it's not worth it. And we need to take other action then if that's the case.
Yeah.
But the effects of this then on a person, we've mentioned the self-doubt. There is so much anxiety, there's
Yes.
hypervigilance, there's self-management, other management. There's so many distracting effects
Yeah.
of this that, you know, I imagine are going to cloud out or crowd out any room for you to hear your own voice. And something I learned that I was just dying to tell you about is that when I'm holding workshops, I have a small bowl that I pass around at the end of the workshop that contain the angel cards, those small little angel cards that are around a very long time. And there is a card in that bowl, and the card is obedience.
Huh.
So I was like, what in God's name is that card doing in there? And I wanted to censor the bowl. And so I went through a period of, wanting to take the card out of the bowl and not put it in there. But I left it in there because I was like, that's me interfering now with, that's me trying to control, or that's me projecting. And then I went through a period of passing around the ball and being like, oh God, I hope nobody gets the obedience card. I hope nobody gets the obedience cards, because all women, of course, we kick back against. We're like, fuck that. I'm not, because we have been, we're tired of obedience. Now, here's what I learned about obedience, because I was thinking to myself, there must be a reason that word is in there. These are angel cards. The rest of them are like love, kindness, compassion, play. Why is obedience in there? So I asked, I did some studies in the Celtic spiritual tradition, and I asked my mentor about this, and she said that the original spiritual meaning of obedience is to hear and act upon. But where it goes wrong is to hear and act upon your divine authority,
Ooh,
right? Divine authority, your voice, your sense of
you're
what's right and wrong. But what has happened to us is that we have been told that authority exists outside of
outside.
ourselves,
Yep.
whether it is the culture, whether it is the religion, whether it is whatever it is, the we are being obedient to that authority that we have outsourced and forgotten how to connect with the inner authority. And she said, so that's what it means when they are blessing you with obedience. They're saying, may you hear and
Yeah.
act upon your
Yes.
divine guidance, divine authority.
I love that. I mean, when you really boil it down, especially around public speaking skills and feeling confident when you're speaking, it is hearing your own voice, hearing your own voice through all the chatter and being comfortable with hearing your voice. Because honestly, who are we going to have the most conversations with in our life?
Yeah.
Ourselves.
Yes.
And so, how to tune into that when we do have a world that is telling us constantly to look outside of ourselves. for affirmation. And I love that you can take a word like obedience that I agree I have a knee-jerk reaction to and think, no, that's really truly obeying myself. And, maybe my word of choice might be like honoring myself. But I love that in that exploration, you were able to take a word that like was triggering and go, oh, okay, now I can make this work. Now this can remain in the bowl. So
Yeah. Now I
tuning
want
in,
that.
yeah, I want that. I want more of that. Also, I
Mm-hmm.
love this stage of life because I do feel like after all the years of walking on eggshells and second guessing and trying to worry if I'm putting something in the perfect phrase, fuck that. I am
Yeah.
so ready to speak my mind unapologetically, of course, with kindness, and with
Yes.
respect. And yet, if I'm doing that and I'm staying tuned into my voice and speaking my truth, I have nothing to be sorry about. So I love that that little girl who was like, I'm done with you. We're not an item anymore. Will you stop trying to speak to me? Knew that, right? That was
Mm.
who I want us all to get back to, right? Is
Yes.
to be that little girl who's just like, no,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
unapologetically no, and has no second guessing baggage about that word. Oh,
Mm.
how liberating would that be? So
I
that's what
know.
I'm calling in for myself and for women. So I even have us practice just saying no, saying different phrases
Mm-hmm.
of no, setting boundaries in ways that work for us. No, thank you. And even with each other. I don't know about you, but once in a while I'll even feel guilty or bad if I have to cancel a plan. It, these are
Mm.
normal things that grown-ups with full lives do. So
Mm-hmm.
just saying, I can't make that. I love you. We'll do it another time.
Mm-hmm.
Saying actually that meal choice where you want to go and eat doesn't really work for my digestive system. Can we try this? All those moments when we keep tuning into what I need, what works for me, is really an opportunity for the people who are in our lives to actually freaking know the real us, right? Because if
Mm.
I'm the good girl who keeps saying, okay, yes, I'll go eat, curry, even though I had, horrible digestion from it the last time I ate it, I'm not honoring what's going on in me. So we are, by speaking our truth and by really being honest, we are going to have so much more fulfilling relationships with the people who matter in our lives, even if it does,
Yeah.
when we're doing it, feel like it's challenging. So I always also encourage clients to take like baby steps, like
Yes.
order a coffee in a more concise way, practice saying no or setting a boundary with people who you feel extremely safe to, and just test the waters.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm a barista by day, right?
Oh,
And speaking of ordering coffee, it's so interesting the amount of, and it is pretty much women who order their coffee, but they're like, could I have an oat latte? Sorry, now I'm being awkward. I know. Literally all without taking a breath. It's like, I'll have a latte, and could I have oat milk? Sorry, now I'm being awkward. I know. And I'm like, you're literally in a fucking coffee shop. What's awkward
yeah.
about it? Like,
Tell me what you
this is
want.
my, yeah, this is my job. Like, behold this milk selection. Like we thought of this.
I think they're probably worried that they're being difficult.
Exactly. Exactly. Because how many of us were the little girl who said, I don't like that crayon. I like this crayon. And somebody was like, you have anger issues or whatever it was. And I love to imagine sending the back, like the time travel, going back to my younger self and all these times and giving her that line to say, do I or do I have boundaries? Like literally just challenge,
Yes.
challenge the accusation that what I have just done is some kind of neurosis on my part. Absolutely not. Maybe you're just not used to hearing no.
Yes, yes. Okay, so let's even stay with the barista example. So, also making strong eye contact with you when you order your, oat milk, half decaf with a shot of whatever syrup in it. That's your order. Own it. right? Don't apologize for ordering what you want and make strong eye contact with your barista. All of those ways are being direct. You're practicing direct communication, and that muscle builds through time. So, take it from a barista, listeners, that like they appreciate, they want to know what you want. No one can
100%.
read your mind about what you want, and you don't have to apologize for what you want unless
No.
you are at Starbucks and you are creating your own damn drink. Then I'm annoyed with you. But
Yeah, we don't do that here, but I have often said to the people who apologize for, ordering oat milk, I'd be like, "Oh, listen, just spend 10 minutes
I
in
love oat milk
Starbucks,
because I do
somewhere
seriously
great."
have digestive issues. Oat milk is my favorite.
Yeah, me too. And also, as you said, take it from a barista. There's nothing more satisfying to me having made your drink for you to take that first sip and be like, "Ah,
Right?
exactly how I wanted it."
Okay. And I'm just going to go here, Amanda, because I feel like you're my soul sister, even though I just met you. Let's do this in the bedroom as well. Let's tell our people what we want. Let's tell our people what we like. Let's tell our people what's feeling good and what's not feeling good.
Oh, radical,
Let's get our order
radical.
right.
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes.
It doesn't mean that I'm always hearing my voice. Like life gets busy, life gets noisy. But to have that reset, come back to her, come back to her, come back to her, come back to her. That's what I really believe is true.
My goodness, yes. I would like the oat milk vibrator, please.
It's been a day. I'm going to go for the decaf vibrator because the fully caffeinated one, can I
No, the
have
purple
the
one, the purple one. Not, no, that's the blue one, the purple one.
right?
Yes, yes. I'm making light of that, but that is probably an example of it. It's like, yeah, just no, use the toy on me, please. Just get the fuck away and use the toy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Are
This
you
is
hearing some
important.
rain? By the way, we are having so much rain in the San Francisco Bay Area right now. It's called an atmospheric river, which is kind of a new term to me, but
Oh,
that's what we're
nice.
having. So I don't know if you hear it, but that is what's happening currently in my studio.
Well, it's a bonus ASMR on this episode. Yes.
You can use that with your decaffeinated vibrator if you need to.
Fair enough. I'll use them all. I'll take it all. I'll do the Starbucks order when it comes to good vibrations. So, um, tell me how how are you helping women specifically with their voice guards? It's professional women who are public speaking. Is that right?
That's right. It's women who have to use their voice for a living in some capacity. It's women who will come to me and say, my career could advance if I could get over this hump. I've had that
Mm-hmm.
happen a lot. Or block. I don't mean to make it sound, like a difficult
Mm,
thing that's dismissive. It's hard. It's really hard. I get coaches and teachers, as well as like traditional public speakers. So this isn't only for folks who are speaking behind podiums. This is also for people who just have to use their voices a fair amount, and are struggling with their relationship about how they sound and how they communicate. So, for instance, I had a woman who came to me and who really was aware of her voice scar. She said that her father, growing up, said that she talked so much it sounded like she swallowed a radio.
oh gosh.
And meanwhile, her brother could talk as much as he wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
to this day, she's a girlfriend of our age. She's an accomplished author and she's a Pilates coach and has to use her voice all the time. To this day, she struggles with, am I being too much? Am
Mm-hmm.
I saying too much?
Mm-hmm.
Because of that old messaging. I have another client who is this total badass researcher for women's health, has to go to Washington, D.C. to present. We're talking high stake presentation stuff, who hates being the center of attention. She's a researcher. She's so happy, doing trials and reading books. And I have to be the face of this organization. Are you kidding me? But she does. So she
Mm.
doesn't want to be in the spotlight, but she has to be. And
Mm.
so we had to work in her case on ways to really like regulate her nervous system so that she could feel more calm. And in extreme cases, some clients will even take beta blockers. If
Yeah.
the anxiety is really profound, there's no reason you should suffer when you're talking. But
Yeah.
you can also get, great communication tools and warm up strategies. So one of the body things I do with people are, breath exercises, or tension release muscle exercises. So this woman who was in DC about to give her talk on a panel said that she was sitting there doing her squeeze release exercises because no one could tell what was happening. And it's a great way for us to again tune into our body and our voice and go, am I holding tension right now or am I relaxing?
Mm.
Because our body doesn't know the difference between being excited and being afraid. It's those are very similar signals. So the
Mm.
more we can reaffirm to our body, I'm okay, I'm relaxed, I'm
Mm.
not in danger. Yes, my heart rate's up. And yes, like I'm a little excited and a little nervous, but I'm not in any danger. So, through
Mm.
doing lots and lots of mindful exercises for her, we helped her with that. The other thing for this client that was really important to address, and this does come up a fair amount with women, was her tonality. So, when we talk, right, we can either speak up, speak at the same tone, or speak down. And she really struggled with what we call up talk and up speak. And I
Mm.
hear this in women a lot. I don't know about you, Amanda. So we had to retrain her to not say everything with an upspeak, which I just did, because she was
Mm.
actually saying things like, "My name is Dr. So and so. I am, the research specialist for such and such hospital." And it just made her
Mm.
sound like she didn't quite know who she was, and it's signaling to everybody, I don't have authority, when she
Yeah.
absolutely did.
Wow.
So we
It's like a
retrained the
couching.
tonality. Sorry, what's that?
It's like a couching. She was couching everything she was saying with this inflection.
Hedging is also a term for that. Exactly.
Okay.
So you're
Mm.
hedging what you're saying, and the tonality is softening what you're saying. Now, a lot of women use it in a great conversational way, which is, guess who I ran into the other day? And people are on the edge of their seats, and guess who I saw? And we string our conversation together. But as a rule of thumb, I want everyone to think about when you're just saying your job title or something that's a belief and is a non-negotiable, say it with a little bit of a down tone, right? So Amanda, can I use you as an example?
Please do.
Could you just say your full name right now and say it, and let's just hear what your tone does?
My name is Amanda Grace.
Hey, notice that. That was lovely, and your voice went down. Now say it as if it's a question mark. Let's just hear how that sounds.
My name is Amanda Grace. Sorry, that was two question mark. My
No,
name is
that's
Amanda. I
okay.
can't even do it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Right? So just having
Yeah.
some tonal awareness about how often you're doing the up talk, up speak. It's very, very prominent for women, and it's not always a bad thing. In fact, it can be
Hmm.
really warm and engaging and great, but using it and being aware of when we're using it. That was a really big one for that particular client. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Something else that I am thinking about here is, I came off Instagram in October of 23.
Mm,
And I just deactivated my account. And so I reactivated my account to kind of start signposting here to Substack. Jessica, when I go back on there now,
mm,
it is just reaffirming to me how much damage it has done to my voice in
mm,
terms of second guessing myself because whatever I have great let's say I have great courage. Somebody called me gutsy. Like I've no problem getting up in front of a room and talking. But what will happen to me is I'm talking shite. This isn't any good. So it's the content. I worry about the content of what I am saying
Yeah.
because you know, I think on some level, because I am advocating for skills that are very much like it's basically a spiritual, you know, adjustment. And I'm talking about things that, like, in other words, I think to myself, I'm not solving a real enough problem. Like, who gives a shit if you're happy? Just do the fucking, just go out and do your job kind of a thing. So there's almost like I think it's a voice scar in my past that is like, what I'm out here selling is not important enough because it's not finance and it's not helping you make money. You think it's not helping you make money, but like if you're emotionally fucked, and you're heading for burnout, you can be damn sure that's going to affect your account, your bank account. But in the short term, it's like the skills that I'm teaching are not generally centered and valued as something worth giving time to and worth investing to. And so that's one thing. And then I go on Instagram and just in the day to day at the moment, I go on and I make one post a day. And I'm realizing how inconvenient Instagram is because it takes ages to do anything on there. But in the meantime, the onslaught of it's just like everybody is shouting on there. And there's all these hot takes. And there's all these,
Right.
like, and it just feels like so much being rammed down my neck that my voice starts to feel, because I started shouting, I started grasping for space.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Yeah.
realize I was doing it. So it
Yes.
created a kind of like, my voice isn't like, nobody's listening to me. And and then I think probably I left myself a bit, and my purpose was no longer connecting. It was about being seen. It was about surviving in this noise. And it kind of made me turn against myself in terms of like, what am I even saying? Like, what am I even here for? And then, of course, the other element of it that I experienced on Instagram is that there's a lot of voice policing going on.
What was that last thing? The rain just went boom. The last
Yeah,
thing.
there's a lot of voice policing. There's a lot of policing happening in terms of, you shouldn't be saying that, you have to say it that way. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost now it's like, I'm afraid, or not I am, but I know that there are people who we are afraid to open our mouths for fear we use the wrong words or, offend somebody.
Well, and that's, Amanda, what I immediately get from you is how real you are. You're not a soundbite. You're not going to feed the algorithm with some shiny, kind of flashy thing. You go deep. And I think it's harder on the, quick bite Instagram culture to really come across in a kind of deeper way. And so I think that those are struggles. It's also frankly why I am loving Substack. I am singing Substack, praises to everybody because it just feels like the social media platform for authors and for creatives and coaches who want to give ourselves time. I don't want to feel rushed to say what I want to say in 15 seconds. And I understand that when we're online and we're scrolling through Instagram or even YouTube, we want to hook people. We want to be engaging. And you clearly are, but there's such a formula that I also was trying to follow on Instagram that also did not agree with my soul because it just felt so tight and so controlled. And also, I don't know if you notice it, but it's so formulaic that I'm so ready for people to cut through that typical formula and just be real again because we're getting fed so much of that phony baloney. And I think it's why I sometimes just love the person who's sitting in their car, just kind of, chattering on. It's so refreshing because it's what we actually do rather than these highly edited, highly manicured pieces. No one talks that way.
Yeah.
And people are editing out all their ums and you knows. And so it just winds up seeming very unnatural. So I think you were struggling with the dissonance of a platform
Mm.
that's asking you to actually be very unnatural and not your true self.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, which kind of like it just clarifies for me talking to you here about this particular thing is that context matters. You know, if you're like something's wrong, there's something wrong here, it must be me. Maybe not. Maybe you're in the
Yes.
wrong room.
Bingo. Bingo.
Yeah.
You know Joni Mitchell? I know you're a big Joni Mitchell fan because we were talking and you shared that incredible song of hers.
Magdala Laundries, yeah.
Yeah, which was absolutely heart-wrenching and so right on. But a really interesting thing happened in her career. So, as a young woman, she was doing all of these self-reflective songs, which I freaking adore. But it was later in her life when she started turning outward and looking outside of herself and going, "Hey, what's going on here? What's going on with those laundries for girls and all the awful stuff that happened there?" She got a lot of pushback. People
Yes.
really preferred the girl, the younger girl who was, a little bit more in her own lane. And I just always hold her up as an idol of someone who said, I can reflect on myself and talk about my own issues, but I can also look outside of myself and talk about those. And I
Mm.
think, Amanda, you're really bringing up a valid point, which is that I'm guilty of it too. I'll immediately go on to myself, be hard on myself, right? So we want room to grow. We want to always be learning, but we also, it's really good to look outside of ourselves and have that balance. And like you said, do I just need to change rooms? I keep trying to
Yeah.
fit in here and it keeps not freaking working. I'm going to
Yeah.
go to a different room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
I hear
true.
you.
Um, uh, Joni's autobiography, in her own words, Joni Mitchell, in her own
Oh,
words,
I need
is
to read that. I need to read that.
it's so good.
Okay.
And it's everything that we're kind of talking about in that. Like Joni Mitchell, she out musicianed the best of them. And they couldn't, and it says it in the book. Like there was so much conflict. First of all, she was a disobedient woman,
Bingo.
right? She was obedient to herself and she was disobedient to the industry, like Sinead O'Connor, who we've also spoken about. And you
One of my
sent me,
heroes. I was
yes,
so convinced that I was a distant cousin because of the O'Connor name. And then I heard that O'Connor is like being named Smith or something.
yeah, and then you just pull out the John B. King thing, and I probably have deafened the listeners with that, but that is just so fascinating. And incidentally, my husband and I, our first date was in Listowel in John Keane's bar.
Oh my gosh. This is why. This is our connection. This is
We are connected.
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So,
We're gonna have a drink there someday. I see it. I see it.
oh, 100% when you come here, I'll be like, and this is Listowel. Let's go and find your people. And I will absolutely, no, I was going to say I will embarrass you, but I doubt that because we'll just be so in our voices. We'll be like, no, I belong here. I'm one of you.
Who are those loud
Um,
ladies?
but yeah, for anybody who really wants to read, like, that autobiography, like, I was fascinated by her and her music and very curious about her.
Yeah.
But the autobiography kind of like pulled back the curtain on her relationship with obedience and authority and how she always marched, as Sinead did, to her own sense of what is right and good for me and
Yeah.
what is, something I will not abide. And both of them were labeled difficult and punished in their own ways and excluded and all of these things. But I loved about Joni Mitchell is that like there were session musicians who could only read music. They could only follow along if you provided them with whatever you call the things, I can't remember, but sheet music.
Right.
And she was like, no, we're just going to feel it. And there was very few musicians who could actually keep up with her intuitive sense of what's going to happen
I
here.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Oh,
And
and yeah, don't get me started. There's such a double standard for, girl musicians, right? That they don't know all the
yeah,
fancy chords, that they're just feeling it. Oh yeah. I love that.
but
Oh,
the fact that she uh, was so obedient to her own inner divine sense of things in the face of such resistance, and in the face of a music industry who wanted her to just shut up and be sexy, you know,
Exactly.
which is the
And
same
keep
as Sinead
singing about how
O'Connor.
sad you are, right?
Yeah, my God.
Joni, sing another sad song where she's like, wait a minute, I'm actually kind of mad. And I saw an interview where she was talking about this change for herself. And that's what she said. I started looking out going, what the hell's going on with these things? And people said, no, 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 we like the sad girl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's yeah.
Gosh.
So that she's also one of my heroines. I think she's one of yours. So another thing for us, especially around healing our voice scars in particular, find those heroines who speak up or who sing and listen to them, watch them, study them. I'm a huge fan of Michelle Obama and her speeches and her writing in particular to the United States right now. Just the people, especially the women who you just think are just fearless and fabulous, follow them, listen to them, let them be in your orbit to reinforce
Yeah.
what we want to continue to do for ourselves, right? So
And
that's a
even
beautiful thing. Yeah.
yeah, and even the women who are getting in trouble, the women who are kind of scary to hear, or the women who are like 'cause that's what Sinead was for me growing up. It was almost
Yeah.
like, it was like listen to her under the duvet kind of a thing, like for fear that her voice would reverberate through the house because I began, what are you listening to her for? She's mad,
Oh my
that kind
God,
of a
I loved
thing.
her.
Yeah.
Well, Sinead O'Connor, I grew up on her too, and I thought she was such a badass. Oh my God, I loved her. I saw her perform in Berkeley, California, and it was just Sinead up on the stage with her acoustic guitar, and she
Wow.
absolutely rocked it. It was a beautiful
Wow.
thing. I'm really grateful I got to do that.
Yeah, I saw her last tour. It was just like it was a holy experience. It was sacred, and she had her eyes closed the entire time while she was up there because she's a very nervous performer, and she had her eyes closed. But there was one moment where she opened her eyes, and all of us, every single person, were just was like, and we all just tried to get in, not get in there, but we just were like, this is our moment to show her how much we love her because
Yeah,
she has just been closed eyes the whole time. And Jesus, what went through the crowd, the love and the respect, and also the fear. She's a
yeah,
very scary person. And it just says anybody who fearlessly speaks their truth in spite of it being agitating to the status quo, it's so that's what I say as well. Like the women who inspire you, and also the women who maybe are a bit confrontational, or
I
who are
love
getting
that.
a reaction. You know,
Absolutely. Yes. There's one other woman who I just read her book, Rebel Girl. She's a feminist punk rock woman. Her name is Kathleen Hanna, and she was in Bikini Kill. Her book out right now is great. She has a song called Rebel Girl, and it's just about like reclaiming your power. And she was part of the Riot Girl movement that was here in the United States. And she writes a great book about kind of the complexities of the punk rock scene, but also just how how much controversy she was causing by being a really, really outspoken woman and very much in the same Sinead O'Connor spirit. So I think you would really like Rebel Girl.
oh,
It's a page turner. It's
I'll
fantastic.
definitely make it
So
out.
yeah, but
Now,
to your point, the women that maybe scare us a little,
hmm
and a few more healing things too that we can all do that instantly can just kind of help us. Because we brought up some pretty intense stuff. Is humming is a
yeah,
really beautiful restorative thing that we do, and there's more and more research coming out about how when you hum, you signal vibrations to your vagus nerve that then really can relax your whole nervous system. And humming tunes you like, just having fun with your actual voice, doing sirens where you take your voice up and down. If you've ever been around a little
okay,
baby and they're sitting there going, yeah, 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 they're
yeah,
playing with this expressive instrument that we all have. And then at some point we relegate it down. It's like I always think of like the young art kids who make great art, and then we all learn that we have to color in between the lines. So the same is true for
hmm
our voices. And humming singing, oh my gosh, singing your songs, sing them shamelessly in the shower, in your car, or to your people. And reading aloud things.
Oh
I
my
have my
gosh.
clients pick some of their favorite song lyrics or poems and read them aloud,
Do
and
you know what's
feel the beauty of that. Yeah. Hmm.
I have an example. It only last night, Jessica. I'm in the 12-step program, and I was at a meeting last night, and unexpectedly ended up reading. So we were reading from the book, and I thought we had a reader, but he decided halfway through the reading, he was like, "Ah, somebody else. I'm done. Somebody else take over." And so we ended up passing the book around, and I read a piece that I realized in the reading that I really had only heard other people read this piece. I had never read it. I had never felt it resonate through my body. And even if I'm reading it at home, because I'm reading it quietly. And
Yes.
in my share, when it came time to share, I was like, I cannot tell you the experience I'm having right now, having actually spoken aloud the words on this page that I have read and heard other people read for a year now. And the fact that they have vibrated through my body, it has landed different. And so I'm going to start reading this book aloud at home.
Yes. Read it aloud. I looked forward to story time when my sons were younger because of the expressiveness of the voices, and I realized, oh my God, I'm getting as much out of this as they are. And
Yeah.
I'm sad that we don't do that. I've heard of people who read to their partners in bed. I think it's why we love audiobooks. We're hearing a voice, the impact of
Yeah.
that, and it lands differently. And I love that by you speaking it, you're taking in that information in a different way. And I don't think we read aloud things for pleasure very much, and it is so pleasurable. So I love that
Mm.
that felt good to you. That's wonderful.
Amazing. So going off with all your tips here are great. Another thing that I did today, which you're just kind of helping me realize that, oh yeah, this thing that I did,
Yeah.
there's a reason that felt good. But something made me today. I was in the gym today and I was listening to a podcast. I listen to plenty, but I love Conan O'Brien's podcast.
Oh, he's great.
He's just the best thing. But there was just he had, I think it might have been Ricky Gervais on, and something they did just made me want to laugh out loud. So I did in the middle of the gym. I let it out, like which I wouldn't normally do. I wouldn't just be like, out in the middle of anywhere. But I was just getting off one machine and onto the other, and there was people around me, and I let myself have it, and I just felt so much like you know,
Yeah.
I was just like, this is a great moment for me, because I
Yes.
let my voice do the thing. I let my voice express what was happening inside, which was like, I was experiencing joy. It was like hilarious. And it allowed me to receive that moment and that gift of humor in a much more embodied way.
I love that. I love that when it shakes our body that we have to let it out. That is a great thing. That is
Yeah.
fabulous.
My dad used to say, when you hold laughter in, it turns into a fart. So don't do that. Because he was a comedian and he'd say that to the audience. He says, "Now don't be holding your laughter in now because you know it'll turn into a fart and then you'll be embarrassed."
Oh,
Um,
that's so good.
yeah.
Words to live by.
Jessica, any last words that you would like to share? I will absolutely link in the show notes to your Substack and all the things that you have on offer. I'm sure my listeners would be interested in the workbook. If you have a link for them to purchase, that would be
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Yes, it's on Amazon and it's very reasonable for, just as many women
Of
to get
what
it
it
as
is.
possible. Yeah, no, I would just say that it's lovely chatting with you, Amanda. Like again, you're a sister from another mister. This has just been delightful. And yeah, if you want to learn more about public speaking with heart, you can visit me at Love Your Voice. It's also I got a URL for it, so www loveyourvoice.me, and that will link you to the Substack and also direct you to the workbook. But yeah, I just want to say to everybody listening to just, have fun, honor this beautiful instrument that we have, and give yourself permission to laugh out loud like Amanda did at the gym, or to order your oat milk decaf latte or vibrator
Proudly.
proudly and loudly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
as my catchphrase is, I hope everyone can stay calm and speak on, because that's what I hope for all of us.
Oh, I love that. Stay calm, speak on.
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you so much. I'm so pleased that we've met and we've, just kind of clicked so well in such a short time. And I look forward to, just being there as you are doing your thing and learning more about you and what you do.
And the same for
Yeah,
you, Amanda. I love it. I think what you're doing is fantastic. It's so important to heal. It's so incredibly important. And we should go have a tea at the pub in Listowel, because
absolutely.
that would
Yeah,
be a cuppa. I'd love that.
smashing. Well, thank you, Jessica. And thank you, listeners. We'll see you next week.
Bye.